Welcome to the Taproxy Method, Creating Confident Learners. The Taproxy Method uses a unique combination of breath work, brain-body work, gratitude, and a clay-based program to affect the neuroplasticity of the brain in students, to help strengthen their mind-body connection, help them develop a growth mindset, and most importantly, trust and confidence in themselves. Aloha and welcome to another episode of the Taproxy Method, Creating Confident Learners. I'm Tani Taproxy, the founder and creator. In this episode, we'll talk about what the quickest route to academic progress and success really is. Make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any episodes. One way to support the Taproxy Method podcast is to leave a 5-star review and written review anywhere you listen to it. Thanks so much, and let's get started. Be sure to sign up for the foundation course. This course is here to support you. It teaches the exact foundational tools I have used with students to ease anxiety and help raise confidence and self-esteem so that they can succeed in all areas of their lives, including academics. It's available as a one-time purchase or as an ongoing monthly subscription with extra group support and monthly live stream. So when I'm teaching a child, I'm using whatever they're doing, whether it's math or reading or writing, to figure out where their academic holes are. Again, I talk a lot about being a detective and seeing what information, what concepts they're not truly understanding, or even if they're just stumbling on it, it's not fully independently learned. And whether it's a missing math concept that they're not strong enough in their basic math facts, the words they misspell or misread, what vocabulary they don't know, or their misunderstanding of punctuation and grammar, I'm doing this to figure out what they don't know. Mostly I'm interested in what they don't know rather than what they do know. And I can do this because I am teaching in a one-on-one setting. My full focus is with the child at hand. But when we teach to exactly what they don't know, then we can make quicker progress across the board because their academics are being tailored directly to their needs. So again, I talk a lot about going 2 steps back to go 3 or 5 steps forward, or 1 step back, 2 steps forward, and teaching easier concepts or basic math sense or spelling patterns that they don't know so that those potholes can kind of be filled in so that they can progress. And when we teach exactly to what they don't know, then we can make quicker progress across the board because their academics are being tailored directly to their need. One of my friends, when I was teaching worldwide, would joke that I was a modern day governess. I actually didn't do any type of nannying, and I was there solely as a teacher for families. But we do have this idealized version of teaching in the classroom in schools. But if we look at how the Queen was taught, or back in the days, how people were taught, it was in a one-on-one teaching setting or tutelage setting that people went to and did. I have one parent currently who always reminds me and gushes over the fact that there truly isn't anything like one-on-one attention for kids, especially for kids. It's the quickest way to create permanent knowledge. It's the quickest way to create that confidence. There's just something about one-on-one relationships and one-on-one teaching that just allows them to blossom just a little quicker, a little bit more intensely. And I love schools. Schools work for 85% of students. I taught in the classroom. I was teaching in the classroom pretty much from 5th grade on as teachers' helpers. But there are about 15% who struggle with the structure of school, with the structure of the school day, with classrooms and so forth. And they struggle with that setting, with distraction, the curriculum, the pace that their peers are going because they haven't mastered a skill that they're missing. And so that's kind of why I am in where I am, because yes, school is wonderful. It works for so much percentage of students, but then those 15% where it doesn't, they need something different. Whether it's the focus, the content, or the actual critical thinking skills that needing to be learned independent. But oftentimes kids need to be explicitly taught, and that kind of 15% where school doesn't work for them, they're the ones who get lost in the mix. So one-on-one teaching, direct teaching directly teaching to what they don't know, those gaps in knowledge, is the quickest way to catch them up to their peers. And again, when they become confident, when there's not any big gaps in their knowledge of where they're supposed to be at with their peers or in their class, their grade level, that's when they start to catch up. That's when it starts to transfer to the classroom and other areas of their life. So again, that confidence, that independence, and truly knowing knowledge fully. And that is the beauty of teaching directly to a child's gap in knowledge as they come up. In a classroom setting, the vocabulary list, the spelling list is just a generalized thing. But when we create spelling or vocabulary that is tailored to what they don't know, we're going to fill in gaps quicker. We're going to build their vocabulary, their spelling much faster than when it's these generalized things. Of course, in a classroom setting, it's a little harder to do that, but there are ways to bring that about as well through word studies, pulling out words from their own reading that they don't know, or creating having them create their own list from their writing examples or journal and so forth that they didn't know, and creating their own list. There's a few ways you can bring that in, but really one-on-one setting, we can do that. And I do have this theory that a child needs to be exposed to a word 10 times to know this word, to hear it, to use it, to read, to see it. And then their growth is quicker. So when we directly teach to what they're missing in spelling, what they're missing into vocabulary, they naturally start to apply that to other words, and their vocabulary and their spelling patterns and spelling accuracy grows over time. And then the growth almost is exponential. Of course, this is a lot of work for a classroom teacher to do. So we have more generalized curriculum in those contexts, or in that context. I am noticing recently that modifications for students have to work for them. And when it makes them so different than their peers and classmates, you can see children shut down, or you can see shut down behavior from them. So yes, when we talk about IEPs and modifying classes, they need to be in line with what's going in the classroom too. It needs to benefit the child, but it also needs to not be so different than everybody else that we start to see that shut down behavior, that kind of lack of confidence, is closing in on themselves, if that makes sense. And this kind of ties into what I was talking about last episode, how sometimes we get so uncomfortable when a child is struggling. We want to step in a little bit early. We want so badly for all our kids to be the same, but the truth is no child and person is exactly alike. They never will be. We have to be careful in how we present things, more of an option of you figure out how you best learn, and you think of the tools from this list of tools. Of course, we teach them that you think is best for the situation, not like you always have to do this tool. You always have to use the computer. You always have to do an audiobook if they're struggling with reading. When we take away their choice, we do take away that empowerment and that confidence in themselves to choose what they want to do from themselves. Yes, maybe it will take longer. Yes, maybe listening to the audiobook would be done in a day, but the reading takes 4 times the amount, but they're getting other things from that. And if they have the motivation to do that, we don't want to take away their choice. Sometimes when I see modifications for kids in the classroom, it's so extreme that they start to just kind of give their power away to what has been told to them, rather than going, do I understand this? Is this good for me? Or should I use this tool instead today? And really giving them more options. That's why in the foundation course, I give a lot of tools so that kids have, and parents too, and teachers have a lot of tools in their toolbox, and then they can pull from what works. And of course, there is some consistency, creating 2 or 3 or 4 of those tools that you use on the regular. But again, we have to be careful in how we present things to children. It needs to be more of the option of you figure out how best you learn, and how you think the tools best work for you. Even with learning differences, we still empower them with the right tools, but we also give them choice and the ability to persevere through something. You can still do this. It might take longer. It might be more challenging, but I have faith in you is really the message we're giving kids. And when we give them that message of I have faith in you, their confidence expands, and their willingness to try a little harder for themselves typically increases, because if they're being mirrored your confidence in them, they will start to see it in themselves as well. It's really cool to see when you start to see that. I believe you can do this. And then they start to believe it as well. Recently, I had one kid this last school year that had some classroom modifications made, but they were made in a way that made him feel like an outcast. So instead of helping in the moment, there was more of a shutdown behavior for the first, I would say, month or so that I hadn't seen all school year because these modifications came in the middle of school year. The modifications were great, but it's how they were implemented into a group setting. Oftentimes, a student will act one way in a group setting and a different way in a one on one setting. So they might be super focused in a one on one setting, but then completely distracted and different in that classroom setting. And sometimes a classroom just isn't the right fit for a child. Sometimes taking a break from the classroom and putting them back into school when they have the right tools and confidence and content skills necessary for that grade level, and all of that is put into place and it's transferred to the classroom, that's when the classroom becomes a viable place. But if it's someplace that they're completely distracted, they're completely behind, a lot of times if we work intensely and fix the holes or go straight to what's missing and catch them up in a non-distracted environment, they will often catch up to their peers a lot sooner than if they were just kind of piecemealing and having support just after school. So that's really where I am a advocate for homeschool for that kind of kid who's just not functioning in that space. And it's really interesting when they do catch up, when they do have the confidence, when they do have the necessary academic skills, they often thrive and reteach their classmates in that classroom. The work I do is often about transferring focus, transferring confidence, transferring focus in a one on one setting to the home or to school or the classroom setting. And when we start to see children transfer skills into the classroom at home and in homework in a way and in the way they present themselves, more interest in school, acting more relaxed, even goofy with what they're working on, then we know what they were missing is part of them and that they are a confident learner for themselves and an independent learner. Oftentimes, once a child is categorized as behind or major modifications are made, they stay behind because they stop trying sometimes, and it becomes too easy for them, and they kind of check out because they always have help and they haven't been taught their strengths. They've been shown their weaknesses. They've shown everything that they're lacking rather than being like, but you have this and this and this and this. Again, some kids really don't thrive in a school setting. So sometimes this is a big reach. Sometimes it is that these foundational skills, academic or just focus skills and nervous system skills and brain processing skills, which is all part of the Taproxy method and in the foundation course, are not in place. They're not consistent enough. It's not embodied. It's not something that they know. So when we're teaching kids, we need to take the next logical step for them, stretch them just enough next to the next step of knowledge base that they need, rather than pushing them to the point of burnout. Learning is a lifelong process, and we work with them with where they're at, with high expectations, at the pace they can sustain with consistency. So I always say it's a long game. It's a lifelong learning pattern we're concerned with. And if we don't teach them this way, then the same problems start over and over again each year. Their needs need to be really addressed. And the deficiencies in knowledge and the lack of understanding or anything that they missed in previous years or just didn't get at the beginning of the school year, whatever it is, needs to be specifically addressed so it doesn't become this occurring loop. I often find that families start a new school year going, oh, this is a brand new school year and everything is going to be better. We have a new school year, and a month in, there's the exact same problems, the exact same pattern and so forth, because nothing has been addressed, nothing has changed. And on top of that, as we get from mid to upper elementary into middle school and high school, every year the content level is heavier and heavier. So now we're starting to compound kind of that gap that is occurring between peers and their classmates and themselves. So some of the things that I do that in a one-on-one setting, that's just really great, and this works at home too, is I read aloud with kids. And the whole time I'm taking notes. I actually have notebooks for every student that I see. And I'm noting what they are consistently struggling with, what they don't understand, what they're processing, or I teach them reading strategies through, or I'm noticing that a student is consistently fumbling with certain words or word patterns when they're reading out loud. Again, it's more uncomfortable to read out loud than internally. So I read all the way through high school out loud with kids because I can hear where they are struggling, what vocabulary they don't know, but also when they read out loud and that starts to become easier and more fluent, their internal reading starts to smooth out as well. So there's a few things that happen when we read out loud, and a lot of kids are very, very uncomfortable, especially if they're behind with reading out loud. So that is a process. Of course, they need to learn how to read independently as well. So there's sometimes I have kids who don't know how to do anything but read out loud. So then we go to the other skill of learning how to read silently and independently. But when we're reading out loud, I'm looking at how a student's reading, if they're fumbling with consistent words, or I teach them certain reading strategies through modeling my own thinking, sharing how I understand the story. And this is not something that we could do if we weren't, discussing the content. I also am keeping a list of words that they don't know vocabulary wise or fluency or skipping. And some of these are trigger words, and I talk more about that in my free reading assessment. If you sign up to my newsletter, or to the newsletter for Creating Confident Learners, it's at pages.tawnytutors.com/newsletter. You'll get that free video, which kind of talks a little bit more about that. But I'm always keeping this running list of words. And then I do use my own 4-part vocabulary development for 5 to 6 words a week for my older kids. And again, I'm getting all this information by playing detective, by hearing them read out loud. We'll do word studies and play for orientation, and also trigger words, high frequency words to address where they stumble or where they struggle with fluency, which are not necessarily vocabulary words. When a child gets to upper elementary and middle school, I found that it's the easiest way to help them spell and write correctly is for them to do their own corrections. This does take a lot longer, but to go back into each writing sample text, whether that is a paragraph or a page, and have them correct it with me, and then they need to learn to track correctly too. Rewrite the whole thing if it's just a practice of that kind of write, correct, or edit and publish, and that becomes a skill they start to learn what they do and don't know. I also tell kids if the word is around, they need to be able to spell it properly, transfer it. This is a skill. And a lot of times kids who are struggling with reading, they have a lot of trouble tracking from, like, say, a dictionary to the paper onto their page, or the word on the board to their page or around them. And so this is a tracking skill as well. And sometimes reading problems can be with orientation or the eye check. But the writing process is not just a one-time thing. And I find that writing is actually the most time-consuming thing to teach kids. There's no shortcut to the writing process, and it actually is not a fluency thing. If you look at the writing flow, it starts with pre-writing or brainstorming, into writing, into revising, where you might go back and write again, into editing, which you might go back and revise, into publishing. So these steps kind of go back and forth until it's done, but it's really writing, editing, and revising your words, your choices, your spelling, your grammar, and then publishing and really having a final piece of writing that has been done. So for the upper elementary and middle school kids, when they have to correct their full writing, they tend to fix their mistakes very quickly because they're seeing them over and over again for themselves. And the writing process is not a one-time thing, but oftentimes students get the message that it is from school, from assignments, and so forth. So we have this writing process that I talked about, from writing or pre-writing to writing to revising to editing and publishing, and back and forth until you have a really solid, polished product. And that's really how books are made, how final projects, essays, and all sorts of things are done. But for the ones who really struggle with the grammar, the punctuation, spelling, this process of a free writing for 10, 15, 20 minutes, one a day, and then the next day correcting it and talking about their mistakes together. The next time, making deeper, complex sentences because we learned through discussion and was brought to awareness. And then having them on the next day recopy and correct the version. So going through the whole writing process over and over and over again helps them explicitly start to fix their own mistakes and learn better. And again, writing and reading are kind of the foundations for all subject matters. So, but when we are addressing their specific mistakes, it then transfers to subsequent writing pieces because they've been made aware of what they're also addressing with their own weaknesses and mistakes. And it's more likely that they will correct it for themselves. So it's not in the most general way, but in the most direct route. What specific word, what specific spelling pattern, what specific math concept or basic number sense don't you know? And let's go and revisit that together and let's learn it together. Be sure to sign up for the foundation course. This course is here to support you. It teaches the exact foundational tools I have used with students to ease anxiety and help raise confidence and self-esteem so that they can succeed in all areas of their lives, including academics. It's available as a one-time purchase or as an ongoing monthly subscription with extra group support and monthly live stream. Be sure to sign up for the newsletter to stay in contact. Keep up with the Creating Confident Learners community on Instagram and Facebook at Creating Confident Learners. Have a blessed day and aloha!